Have you ever spent an entire weekend on your hands and knees, pulling out weeds until your back aches, only to see them grow back a week later? What if I told you that you are actually throwing away the most powerful, expensive natural fertilizer your garden could ever ask for? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are turning everything you know about gardening completely upside down. We are going to look at 5 common backyard weeds that will actually feed your entire garden for absolutely $0. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at a dandelion or a stinging nettle the same way ever again. In fact, you might even start planting them on purpose. Think about it. Why do weeds grow so fast and look so green when our expensive vegetable plants struggle to survive? There is a hidden secret beneath the soil that garden centers do not want you to know. So tell me right now in the comments, do you currently throw your weeds in the trash or do you compost them? Let us find out why your trash is actually pure garden gold. Before we dive into our list of 5 miracle plants, we need to understand a little bit of backyard history. For hundreds of years, the concept of a weed did not even exist. Early farmers and ancient gardeners understood that nature does not make mistakes. Plants grow in specific areas for a very specific reason. When soil is damaged, compacted, or lacking nutrients, Mother Nature sends in her first responders. These first responders are what modern people call weeds. They are pioneer plants designed to heal the earth. Fast forward to the 20th century, and the chemical fertilizer industry convinced us that a perfect garden must be completely bare earth, with only our chosen vegetables growing. They sold us weed killers, and then sold us synthetic fertilizers to replace the nutrients those weeds would have provided naturally. But the truth is, many of these wild plants are what botanists call dynamic accumulators. They have specially adapted root systems that mine deep into the subsoil, bringing up trapped minerals and vitamins that your shallow-rooted vegetables simply cannot reach. By fighting these plants, we are fighting nature's own free delivery system for soil health. Let us start with the first misunderstood plant in our garden. I am talking about the infamous stinging nettle. Most people see this prickly green plant and immediately run for their thickest leather gardening gloves and a heavy shovel. The common myth is that nettles are just an aggressive nuisance that ruins your yard and stings your ankles. But wait just a minute. You are actually looking at one of the most powerful natural fertilizers on the entire planet. For centuries, old-school traditional gardeners knew that wherever nettles grow wild, the soil beneath them is incredibly rich and fertile. Nettles are the ultimate dynamic accumulators. They send their complex root systems deep down into the earth, way past the topsoil, where your vegetable roots normally stop. Down in the dark earth, they act like little miners. They pull up high concentrations of iron, magnesium, calcium, and massive amounts of nitrogen. Then, they store all these amazing vital nutrients right inside their jagged green leaves. When you pull them up and throw them away, you are literally throwing away premium plant food. But how do we actually use this prickly beast without getting stung? The answer is creating a simple, free liquid fertilizer that rivals anything you can buy in a plastic bottle. The process is incredibly straightforward and costs absolutely nothing. First, put on some thick gloves and harvest a large bundle of stinging nettles before they produce their seeds. You want the fresh green leaves and stems. Chop them up roughly with some garden shears to expose the inner plant tissues. Next, grab a large plastic bucket, preferably one with a tight-fitting lid. Stuff the chopped nettles into the bucket until it is about half full. Now, fill the rest of the bucket to the top with rainwater. Do not use tap water if you can avoid it, because the chlorine can harm the beneficial bacteria we want to cultivate. Put the lid on the bucket and place it in a warm, sunny spot in your yard. Now you just have to wait. Let the mixture steep and ferment for about 2 weeks. Be warned, it will smell pretty bad when you open it. But that terrible smell is the scent of pure, organic nitrogen breaking down into a form your plants can easily drink. Now that you have your dark, foul-smelling nettle tea, it is time to see the magic happen in the garden. This liquid is highly concentrated, so you never want to pour it directly onto your plants straight from the bucket. You must dilute it. A good rule of thumb is mixing 1 part of your nettle tea with 10 parts of clean water in your watering can. Once diluted, it looks like pale green tea. This is where we bust the myth that organic gardening is slow. Let me give you a vivid example. Imagine your tomato plants looking a bit yellow, tired and stunted in the middle of July. They have exhausted the soil and are begging for nutrients. Instead of buying chemical spikes, you water the base of those tomatoes with your diluted nettle tea. Because the nitrogen and iron are already in a liquid, bioavailable form, the tomato roots absorb them almost instantly. Within just 3 to 5 days, you will witness an incredible transformation. Those pale yellow leaves will turn a deep, vibrant emerald green. The main stem will thicken, and the plant will suddenly push out a massive wave of new yellow blossoms. The benefits of stinging nettle do not just stop at liquid fertilizer. If you do not want to deal with the smelly buckets of fermenting weed tea, there is another incredibly easy way to use them. You can use them directly in your planting holes. This is a secret trick used by champion vegetable growers around the world. When you are planting out heavy-feeding crops like pumpkins, squash, or large brassicas like cabbage and broccoli, you can use fresh nettles as a slow-release foundation. Dig your planting hole a few inches deeper than you normally would. Take a handful of freshly chopped stinging nettle leaves and drop them right into the bottom of the hole. Cover them with a thin layer of soil and then place your vegetable seedling on top. As the season progresses, those buried nettles will slowly break down and rot underneath the plant. They will provide a steady, continuous stream of nitrogen and trace minerals exactly when the growing vegetable needs it most. It is like burying a slow-release multivitamin pill right under your crop. So next time you see nettles creeping into the corner of your yard, do not get mad. Celebrate your free fertilizer. Let us move on to weed number 2. It is the absolute enemy of every suburban homeowner who dreams of a perfect, uniform green lawn. I am talking, of course, about the dandelion. Millions of dollars are spent every single year on toxic chemical sprays just to eradicate these bright yellow flowers. The myth here is that dandelions choke out your grass and steal nutrients from your desirable plants. The exact opposite is actually true. Dandelions are not invaders. They are nature's tiny yellow paramedics sent in to fix compacted, poor-quality soil. Think about where you usually see dandelions growing the most. You see them pushing up through cracks in solid concrete sidewalks, or growing in hard, heavy clay soil where nothing else can survive. They are able to do this because they possess an incredibly strong, thick taproot that works like a biological drill bit. This root drives straight down through hard-pan soil, breaking up compaction and creating channels for water and air to flow deep into the earth. By killing them with poison, you are actually keeping your soil hard and lifeless. The real magic of the dandelion lies in what that biological drill bit is actually doing underground. While our shallow-rooted grass and garden vegetables are fighting for whatever tiny bits of food are left in the top few inches of dirt, the dandelion root is mining the deep earth. That taproot pulls up massive amounts of calcium, potassium, and iron. It channels these essential minerals up the stem and deposits them directly into those wide green leaves and bright yellow flowers. Calcium is an incredibly important nutrient for garden vegetables. Without enough calcium, your tomatoes will develop a nasty condition called blossom end rot, where the bottom of the tomato turns black and mushy. Your peppers will drop their flowers before forming fruit. Instead of buying crushed oyster shells or expensive calcium supplements, you can let the dandelions do the heavy lifting for you. When the dandelion eventually dies back in the winter, or when you chop off the leaves, all that mined calcium is released directly into the topsoil. They are literally pumping free fertilizer from deep underground right to the surface where your vegetables need it. So, how can we actively harvest this dandelion power for our vegetable beds? The easiest method is to create a fast-acting foliar spray. Foliar feeding is when you spray nutrients directly onto the leaves of a plant rather than just watering the soil. Plants can actually absorb minerals straight through their leaves incredibly fast. To make this spray, you want to collect both the green leaves and the yellow flower heads of the dandelions. Get a good-sized basket full of them. Do not worry about taking too many, as dandelions grow back remarkably fast. Chop them up and place them in a pot of water on your kitchen stove. Bring the water to a gentle simmer, not a rolling boil, and let it steep for about 30 minutes. You are essentially making a strong dandelion soup. Turn off the heat and let it cool down completely to room temperature overnight. The next day, strain out all the plant material, leaving you with a golden brown, mineral-rich liquid. Pour this liquid into a spray bottle. You have just created a highly concentrated calcium and potassium tonic for your garden. Let us paint a picture of how effective this dandelion spray can be. Imagine you have a beautiful row of rose bushes or a bed of sweet bell peppers. It is the middle of the summer and the plants look healthy, but they are just not producing many flowers. Fewer flowers mean fewer vegetables and a less impressive garden. This usually happens when a plant lacks the potassium needed to trigger heavy blooming. You take your homemade dandelion spray and lightly mist the leaves of your roses and peppers early in the morning, before the sun gets too hot. The leaves quickly absorb the liquid potassium and calcium. Within a week, the results are staggering. The rose bushes explode with tight, healthy buds that open into massive, deeply coloured flowers. The pepper plants suddenly push out dozens of tiny white blossoms, setting the stage for a massive harvest. The dandelion, the very plant that people spend their weekends trying to destroy, holds the exact combination of minerals needed to trigger explosive flowering in your favourite plants. It is a completely free resource, endlessly renewable, and perfectly balanced by nature. Our third miracle weed is a plant that seasoned organic gardeners speak about with absolute reverence. It is wild comfrey. Now, you might have heard of cultivated Russian comfrey, but wild comfrey often pops up uninvited in damp, shaded corners of yards and pastures. The great myth surrounding comfrey is that it is a highly invasive weed that will take over your entire property and strangle out your native plants. While it is true that it spreads easily, labeling it a destructive weed is a massive misunderstanding of its purpose Comfrey is perhaps the king of all dynamic accumulators. It has large, fuzzy, slightly irritating leaves and beautiful little bell-shaped flowers. But just like the dandelion, the secret lies below ground. Comfrey roots can reach down up to 10 feet into the subsoil. Because it reaches so incredibly deep, it accesses nutrient reserves that have been completely untouched since the last ice age. It is pulling up ancient minerals. But the one nutrient that comfrey is famous for accumulating in massive, unbelievable quantities is potassium. Potassium is the absolute key to growing massive, heavy fruits and vegetables. The easiest and most popular way to use this wild weed is a technique called chop and drop. This is a core principle in permaculture, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It requires almost zero effort, which makes it perfect for the lazy gardener. When your comfrey plant has grown tall and bushy, right before it starts to open all of its flowers, you simply take a pair of garden shears and chop the entire plant down to about 2 inches above the soil line. Do not pull out the roots, just give it a harsh haircut. Now, take all those massive, thick green leaves you just cut and lay them out flat on the soil directly underneath your hungry vegetable plants, like a green blanket. You are using the chopped comfrey as a living mulch. As the hot summer sun beats down on those leaves, they will start to wilt and decompose very rapidly. Because comfrey leaves have a very low carbon to nitrogen ratio, they rot down much faster than dry autumn leaves or wood chips. Within just a few weeks, that thick green blanket melts away into a thin, black layer of pure, nutrient-dense compost. Let us look at a vivid, real-world example of the comfrey chop and drop method in action. Let us say you are trying to grow giant pumpkins for a fall festival, or maybe just a massive crop of zucchini. These heavy fruiting plants are notoriously greedy. They will strip the soil of potassium faster than almost any other plant in the garden. Without enough potassium, your pumpkins will stay small, and your zucchini will shrivel up and fall off the vine. In early summer, you surround the base of your pumpkin vines with a thick layer of freshly chopped comfrey leaves. Every time it rains, or every time you turn on the sprinkler, water passes through those rotting comfrey leaves. It creates an instant compost tea right on the surface of the dirt, washing high doses of potassium straight down to the pumpkin roots. The results are phenomenal. The vines grow thicker than your thumb. The leaves become massive solar panels. And the pumpkins themselves swell up with heavy, dense flesh. All of this explosive growth is powered entirely by a wild weed that you simply cut down and dropped on the ground. No mixing, no measuring, just nature working in perfect harmony. The beauty of comfrey is that it just keeps giving. Remember how I said you should chop it down to 2 inches above the soil? Well, because its root system is so massive and established, the plant does not die. In fact, it barely even slows down. Within 4 to 5 weeks, that comfrey plant will have grown completely back, fully reloaded with fresh leaves and newly mined minerals. You can repeat the chop and drop process 3 or 4 times in a single growing season from the exact same weed. It is essentially a permanent, biological fertilizer factory operating quietly in the corner of your yard. You can use successive harvests to feed different parts of your garden. The first cut in spring can go to your early potatoes. The second cut in midsummer can feed your tomatoes and peppers. The final fall cut can be tossed directly into your compost bin to supercharge the rotting process over the winter. Once you understand the sheer volume of biomass and nutrients a single wild comfrey plant produces, you will realize why ripping it out is a terrible mistake. Moving on to weed number 4, we have a delicate-looking plant with fern-like leaves and flat clusters of tiny white or pink flowers. This is yarrow. Yarrow is often found growing wild in dry, dusty lawns, along highway ditches, and in abandoned lots. The common myth is that yarrow is just a stubborn, useless weed that signifies terrible, dry dirt. But historically, yarrow has been highly respected. Ancient soldiers used it to stop bleeding on the battlefield, which is why its scientific name honors the Greek hero Achilles. But we are not making medicine today. We are looking at yarrow as a miraculous garden booster. While nettle brings nitrogen and comfrey brings potassium, wild yarrow is a master at mining trace elements, specifically copper, phosphorus, and sulfur. These trace elements are the micronutrients that are almost always missing from cheap bags of store-bought potting soil. Without copper and sulfur, plants have a very weak immune system. They become highly susceptible to fungal diseases like powdery mildew and black spot. Yarrow acts as the immune system booster for your entire backyard. One of the most incredible properties of yarrow is its role as a compost activator. If you have ever tried to start a compost pile in your backyard, you know the frustration. You pile up dead leaves, grass clippings and kitchen scraps, and then you wait. Sometimes you wait for an entire year, and the pile just sits there, dry and unchanged. It has not broken down into soil. This happens because the pile lacks the right combination of moisture, heat, and beneficial bacteria. This is where our weed, yarrow, steps in as a catalyst. Yarrow leaves are packed with natural plant hormones and essential oils that dramatically stimulate bacterial reproduction. When you chop up just a few handfuls of wild yarrow and mix it into a stagnant, lazy compost pile, it is like throwing gasoline onto a smouldering fire. The biological activity inside the pile absolutely skyrockets. The bacteria multiply at an astonishing rate, consuming the dead material and generating intense heat. Let us explore a vivid example of this composting magic. Imagine you have a compost bin filled with tough, dry autumn leaves and woody twigs. It has been sitting there for 6 months doing absolutely nothing. The dirt is lifeless. You go out to the edge of your driveway, pull up a large bunch of wild yarrow, chop it into fine pieces, and use a pitchfork to mix it deep into the center of that dry leaf pile. You add a little bit of water and walk away. Within just 48 hours, if you stick your hand into the center of that pile, it will be uncomfortably hot to the touch. You might even see steam rising from the pile on a cool morning. The yarrow has awakened the dormant bacteria. Fast forward just 4 to 6 weeks, and those tough, woody twigs and dry leaves have completely collapsed. What is left is a dark, crumbly, rich black substance that smells like a deep forest floor. You have successfully created premium compost in record time. And the only secret ingredient was a handful of weeds you found growing in a ditch. Yarrow also provides a massive benefit while it is still alive and growing. Because of its strong aromatic essential oils, it acts as a powerful companion plant. The scent of yarrow is highly confusing to many pest insects. When you allow yarrow to grow wild near your vegetable borders, the strong scent masks the smell of your tender cabbages and carrots. Pests like aphids and certain types of destructive beetles will simply fly right past your garden, unable to locate their favorite food. At the same time, those flat, umbrella-like flower heads are an absolute magnet for predatory insects. Ladybugs, hoverflies, and tiny parasitic wasps love to drink the nectar from yarrow flowers. These are the good guys. These predatory bugs will set up camp in the yarrow and then patrol your vegetable beds, eating thousands of aphids and caterpillars. So, by leaving this weed alone, you are getting free trace minerals for your compost and a free biological pest control army to protect your harvest. Our final miracle weed is one that might surprise you. It is a low-growing creeping succulent with thick, fleshy reddish stems and smooth, teardrop-shaped leaves. It is called purslane. If you have a garden, you have almost certainly fought a battle with purslane. It loves to suddenly appear in perfectly tilled soil between your neat rows of vegetables. The great myth surrounding purslane is that it is a choking weed. Because it spreads out like a thick green mat across the bare soil, gardeners panic. They assume it is smothering the roots of their expensive crops and stealing all the water. So, they bring out the hose and scrape the soil totally bare. This is a tragic mistake, especially during the hot days of summer. Purslane is actually not a competitor to your vegetables. Its root system is incredibly shallow and weak. It does not compete for the deep nutrients your tomatoes and peppers rely on. Instead, it offers a completely different type of service to the garden ecosystem. Purslane is the ultimate living mulch. To understand the value of living mulch, we have to understand how destructive the summer sun can be. When you aggressively weed your garden and leave the dark dirt completely bare and exposed to the sky, you are baking your soil. The harsh ultraviolet rays kill the delicate beneficial bacteria and fungi living in the top inch of dirt. Furthermore, bare soil loses moisture incredibly fast. The sun evaporates the water, leaving a hard, cracked crust that rain simply rolls right off of. Now, look at how purslane behaves. It rapidly covers that bare dirt with a dense, cooling canopy of succulent leaves. It acts like a green umbrella for the earth. Underneath a patch of purslane, the soil stays significantly cooler. The moisture from the morning dew and your irrigation is trapped underneath the leaves, preventing evaporation. It creates a humid, protected microclimate where earthworms and soil microbes absolutely thrive. By trying to keep a perfectly clean, bare soil garden, you are actually dehydrating your own plants. Let me give you a powerful example of how purslane can literally save your garden. Imagine a brutal heatwave strikes in late August. It has not rained for 3 weeks, and the temperatures are soaring over 100 degrees. Gardeners all over your neighborhood are watching their sweet corn and green beans shrivel up and die. Their bare soil is cracked like a desert. But in your garden, you allowed a carpet of wild purslane to grow undisturbed around the base of your sweet corn. While your neighbors are dragging hoses out twice a day just to keep things alive, your soil remains slightly damp and cool to the touch beneath the purslane canopy. The fleshy leaves of the weed are actually absorbing the intense heat and trapping the ambient humidity. When you finally pull back the purslane, you see dark, moist earth and active earthworms right at the surface. Your corn remains green, tall, and stress-free. This weed acts as a biological shield against drought. It does the job of an expensive drip irrigation system and wood chip mulch combined, and it planted itself for free. Beyond moisture control, purslane is also quietly feeding your soil. Like our other weeds, it is a dynamic accumulator, but it specializes in mining phosphorus. Phosphorus is the crucial element needed for massive root development and seed production. As the season turns to fall and the purslane naturally dies back with the first frost, all those thick, juicy leaves and stems melt directly down into the topsoil. They release a perfectly measured dose of organic phosphorus right into the root zone of your garden beds, perfectly prepping the soil for your winter garlic or next spring's planting. It is a completely closed-loop system. The weed grows to protect the bare soil from the summer sun, holds onto the moisture when water is scarce, and then composts itself in place to feed the next generation of plants. This is the absolute genius of nature's design. When we stop trying to control every single inch of the garden and start observing how these wild plants function, we unlock a level of abundance that chemical fertilizers could never provide. So, there you have it. The incredible truth about the plants we have been conditioned to hate. We have seen how the stinging nettle acts as a deep earth miner for iron and nitrogen, easily brewed into a powerful liquid feed. We learned that the dandelion is not a lawn killer, but a biological drill bit, bringing crucial calcium to your roses and tomatoes. We discovered the massive potassium factory hidden within wild comfrey, perfect for the lazy chop-and-drop method. We saw how yarrow can heat up a dead compost pile in just a few days. And finally, how the misunderstood purslane provides a life-saving living mulch during severe summer droughts. The grand takeaway here is simple but profound. Mother Nature does not need us to buy things in plastic bottles to make plants grow. She provides the solutions directly in the dirt, entirely for free, if we are just willing to stop fighting her and start working with her. The next time you walk out into your yard with a weed puller, I hope you pause and recognize the free fertilizer waiting for you. Thank you so much for watching. If this video changed your perspective on garden weeds, please hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 weeds is growing right now in your yard? And how are you going to use it this weekend? Let us start a conversation in the comments below.